So I'm going to be talking to you about the second track in my portfolio submission, and this is a song by a band called TREP called The Architect, and it's from a further extended session where we did a live version of their EP, Lucian, and basically we did it live, but kind of half DI and live drums, kind of DI'd bass and guitar. Not that you can really tell, but I usually DI bass anyway. But yeah, let's get into it. So immediately a lot heavier. So first thing to note is the drum, the drum group here has 3 sends, a short reverb, a long sort of crushed reverb sound. It's essentially like in my head I'm using that as if you're reamping through sort of a lo-fi kind of old tube amp or something like that, and then a nice bit of like a sort of bus compression, parallel compression, whatever you want to call it, with the V comp here and the API. Yep, so digging into the drum production here on the kick sound. I opted for quite a usual technique with this sort of stuff, to do a little bit of kick replacement, but not loads. Like, it's not a super overpowering sample or anything. I think it just adds a little bit of weight. And then coming into it, we got the noise gate on both the kick and the sub, just to eliminate any kind of extra noise, unnecessary noise. Again, got the API 560 just because it is just so precise in, or not necessarily precise, more like bold in its decisions. If you put something somewhere, it sounds like it's definitely had an effect. And just a little bit of compression on the other end with the LA76 as well. Similar sort of setup with the sub, less in terms of compression, just more EQ in that kind of big sound, and absolutely nothing on the kick sample, just because I consider kick sample to be dealt with in terms of everything really, EQ, compression, what have you. Moving on to the snare sound here, again bit of replacement, but because of some inaccuracies in the way it was captured, the replacement track rather, there are some portions where the threshold, it doesn't cross the threshold into actually creating the part. So in that kind of case, it creates almost like a sort of roll really, which is really nice because you get the natural fade in of the real snare, and then the obvious kind of like artificial but heavy snare replacement. You got a floor tom, similar sort of setup, noise gate with the EQ, rack tom, similar sort of deal. I don't want to do too much, considering sort of the extra compression we've got around. The overheads are interesting. I got a compression here, same setting, but I'm using the FabFilter Pro Q2 here, and that has the so you send the the signal of the other overhead, and then you can kind of do this EQ matching thing here, which really helps to kind of line everything up. And also with the overheads, I sort of brought it in line to the snare sound here, just so we're a bit more phase coherent and all that sort of stuff. And then you got the mono room here, which I just sort of ran through a compressor and crushed it. Did a little bit of EQ there and noise gate as well. That on its own is probably like a good percentage of the drum sound that you're hearing. That and all these external sends here. Yeah, so as you can hear, really compressed, really driven, which it really does add a lot of colour to the rest once you're aware of it. Okay, moving on from the drums, we've got some guitars here. Simple sort of setup: compression, EQ, little noise gate. The guitars weren't double tracked, but I split them. Well, I created a duplicate and panned them left and right a little bit, just to create a little bit of space. It really does thicken out the sound though. So actually in here we've got a little bit of corrective EQ and just a sort of colourful EQ, if you like, a bit of a boost. Yep. That is about the size of it for the guitars really. I kept it fairly simple, but I think it does sound really effective in terms of like modern metal, hard rock sort of production. It definitely fits that kind of paradigm very well. Yeah, so that's basically the guitars. Bass I found a little bit tricky just because his playing's slightly inconsistent. Something quite muddy about the whole mix, but as a unit, in locking in with the guitars, it sounds really like a wall of sound sort of effect. It adds the right amount of low end to the guitar part. So yeah, any mud that you're hearing soloed, I was quite concerned about it when I was first mixing, but it actually became a really big asset in terms of weighing down the guitar a little bit, just really boosting that low end. Yeah, and again, not an amazing chain or anything. There's a gate, EQ, the Fairchild emulation, a bass rider on there, and a limiter. Slightly more intensive than the guitar. I think that's because initially I was trying to kind of do a bit of corrective sort of stuff there, but once I settled it into the rest of the mix, I really just discovered how perfect it felt with the guitars being kind of mid-rangey, less bassy, and just really filling out that section. I'm going to talk about, well, I'll talk about the backing track briefly. So they brought in some extra kind of content, and I was kind of thinking how to mix that in and make it sound sort of effective, because obviously I don't know how they created this sort of stuff. I assume it was just sort of MIDI. It sounds MIDI to me, but it doesn't sound bad. It sounds quite good in the mix, really. It really does kind of thicken stuff out. So all I did to this, because I assume it'd been through kind of a bit of processing, was just a bit of stereo spread, just to kind of like push it around the mix a little bit more. Like on its own, it doesn't sound particularly realistic or anything, but I don't think that's what they're going for. It really does have the nice amount of attack to kind of cut through. Going on to talk about the vocal. I had a lot of fun messing around with the vocal here. On the actual summon, there's nothing particularly kind of gluing them together, if you like. but the chain here, similar actually to the track before, but yeah, there's a bit of corrective stuff here in terms of taking out some nasty frequencies, sort of like that booming low end that doesn't really affect the vocal at all, and some sort of room reflections as well. And then yeah, take out a bit of sibilance with the de-esser. The mid-range EQ here kind of adds a lot of weight and warmth, I suppose. Again, same thing. That really, the LA2A really emphasizes that mid-range boost, adds a bit of extra harmonics and sort of saturation almost. And then yeah, I've got the SSL EQ here, boosting a lot of high range frequencies, 8K, sort of 4K, 2K, kind of just like little boosts. With that, you got a bit of presence and clarity to the vocal, and that kind of the LA3A really tames it. It's just a fast acting compressor, really. Still with that kind of vintage sound though, which I kind of enjoy. I think I really do enjoy older emulations of, newer emulations of older gear, because it kind of captures the in the boxness with a little bit of analog kind of sound to it. Like there's a little bit of emulation there, so there's an effort to kind of go to where the original boxes went to, which is important in terms of recreating kind of specific eras and specific sounds, I think, which I'm all about in my production, which you'll see in the next track after this. Yeah, anyway, so after that you got the LA76 here. Slightly more aggressive in the bluey configuration on this track, just to really add that kind of weight and swagger to the whole vocal mix. If you just listen to it soloed up.
Pull at the thread, unravel.
As well as a bit of EQ here. Just boost that quite low end and cut in at quite a sort of low high frequency, if you like. Got a limiter on there as well, and this doubler. Which really does help.
Pull at the thread,
the feel of like a double track, or And then as well as that, we've got a bit of a dirt vox kind of like this.
Pull at the thread.
It's just a sort of little slap to it as well. It's slightly panned as well, but I think it really just adds something to the overall mix. This is interesting as well. Well, in a minute, I'll go over the backing vocals first. Similar change, I mean, they're not the best backing vocals in the world in terms of recording quality or capture. Consistency in pitch can be a bit of a problem, but in context, I didn't have to do that much correction. It really helps to kind of maintain a bit of a live feel to the whole thing as well. The imperfections really do make that part of it. Anyway, so in this section here, it's a really powerful kind of bridge. So he's doing that with his vocals, that kind of that kind of vocalization sort of stuff. And I thought, what would be a better way to, what would be an additional dimension to this sound after the first half of it. And I thought, why not do a bit of pitch shifting that you won't really notice unless you're listening out for it. And it blew me away kind of thing, because I found that it really helped thicken out the sound for me. Sounds a little ridiculous in solo, but it's almost like a kind of a choir kind of sound to it. But yeah, in context you never know. Really, you can kind of hear it a little bit. The low pitch of the pitched versions changes out to a normal pitch, and then over on the other side, just to kind of really fatten everything up for lack of Again, on the pitch stuff, it's literally pretty much the same chain, just with a little bit of pitch shifting up and down. But yeah, that's about the size of the track. On the master bus, we got the same setup with the SSL compressor and the Pultec EQ there. But yeah, that's about the size of everything in this mix. I'm really happy with it. I think it really represents modern metal well, or that kind of fusion, that interesting fusion that TREP walk upon, rather, which is kind of a fusion between like a harder rock and a metal sort of situation, with a little bit of sort of prog elements and lots of interesting stuff in there. So yeah.